A family of 7 is waiting for their flight to New York at the Jamaica airport. As they wait, there is an announcement that the particular flight from Jamaica to New York has been overbooked, and some of the passengers will have to transfer to flight 828. As the scene progresses, we are introduced to the family as the Stone family. The brother Ben, his son Cal, and his sister Michaela decide to board flight 828 while the rest of the family fly on the original flight. We are then shown flight 828 as it is preparing to begin landing. However, all of a sudden, a storm appears out of nowhere and the plane faces rapid turbulence, panicking all of the passengers. Soon, the turbulence stops and they normally make their way over to JFK Airport to land. The scene cuts to the cockpit of flight 828, where the pilot is told to land at a different airport. The operator on the comm sounds nervous as the pilot tells him the name of the flight, 828. The pilot is told the military and medical staff will be at the airport, confusing him, but they land the plane either way. As the plane lands, the passengers are gathered near the plane and greeted by Vance, the director of NSA, and the primary investigator for the Flight 828 case. He announces that this plane flew from Jamaica Airport on April 7, 2013, and the date today is November 4, 2018. All the passengers have been declared missing and dead for the past 5 years. The scene then cuts back to that day, April 7, 2013, in Jamaica's airport. We are given a proper introduction to the Stone family. Michaela is a detective in the New York Police Department and was recently proposed to by her long-term boyfriend and co-worker, Jared. She is under pressure from her mother to move on with life and get settled, but she is reluctant as she is suffering from the trauma of a recent incident she went through. Ben and his wife Grace have been married for 15 years and have a pair of 6-year-old twins, Cal and Olive. Cal was born with leukemia and only has 6 months to live. Michaela looks at her family and thinks about how stressed and upset they are behind the happy family facade they put on. Back to the present, on November 4, 2018, an investigation reveals that none of the passengers have aged since they boarded that plane. The NSA starts its investigations, questioning the passengers, but they have no idea what is going on. The passengers are made to camp at the airport as the NSA continues its investigations. After 36 hours, the news of Flight 828 makes its way to the rest of the world, and the families of the passengers rush to the airport to meet the people they thought had died. Grace is beyond thrilled to see Ben and Cal. Olive is now a teenager and double the height of her twin. Unfortunately, Michaela and Ben's mother passed away 2 years ago, and both the siblings have a hard time dealing with the loss. The Stone family tries to settle back in as scientists examine Flight 828, but find nothing amiss. Michaela is worried as her fiancé, Jared, didn't come to meet her at the airport. So she makes her way to the police department where she is greeted by a senior detective who welcomes her back and tells her about the case of 2 girls being kidnapped from their backyard that is troubling the department. Michaela then meets Jared, who is currently the lead detective on the abduction case, and finds out that he married her best friend Lord last year. Even though there is nothing wrong with him doing that, as Michaela was presumed dead for 5 years, she still feels bad. For her, it has only been 2 days. On the other hand, Ben takes Cal to the doctor for his leukemia, where they find out that in 5 years, researchers have found a way that can help Cal live longer than 6 months. Grace and Ben are overjoyed. We then see Michaela traveling in a bus when she hears a voice telling the bus driver to slow down. The voice is so loud that it causes Michaela to shout at the bus driver to slow down, and this saves a little boy who was about to step in front of the bus. The next scene introduces us to another passenger, Savi, a medical researcher. Her research, which she submitted before getting on Flight 828, has helped researchers a tremendous amount and has cured cancer. The next day, as Michaela is doing her usual run, she passes by 2 dogs inside a gate and hears a voice telling her to release them. She ignores it and continues her jog. The day passes, and at night she still hears the same voice. She makes her way over to the dogs and is soon joined by Ben. He tells her he heard the same voice which brought him here. They both release the dogs and decide not to tell anyone about these voices, as people might want to do experiments on them. In the police department, Jared sees the CCTV showing Michaela releasing the dogs, and he decides to not circulate it to keep Michaela out of trouble. He asks Michaela why she did that, but she has no answer, and they return the dogs to the owner. When Michaela reaches the dogs, she hears the voice again, and this time it's very loud and persistent. To stop the noises, she simply breaks open a door, and inside are the two girls that were abducted. The voice had been telling her to release the girls, not the dogs, all along. Jared captures the dog owner in the crime of kidnapping the girls. Michaela is applauded by all of the police department and allowed to come back to work by starting desk duty for a few days. Throughout all this, Ben is trying his best to reconnect with Olive by participating in her life and going to her football games. However, he does not put a lot of pressure on her, as after his disappearance, Olive had to go to therapy. We then see Grace texting with her boyfriend, who tells her to tell Ben about him as soon as she can. All of a sudden, some passengers get a headache and a feeling tells them to go to the airport. Upon reaching the airport, they are all shocked to see each other and realize they had the same instinct. Out of nowhere, Flight 828 explodes, and the NSA brings in all of the passengers present at the scene to question them. However, they all have the same statement that they just felt like coming to the airport. The officials decide to let them go after 10 hours of questioning and keep a close eye on them. In the morning, Ben hears a tune, and upon asking his family, he realizes he is the only one hearing it. He and Grace take Cal to chemotherapy, where they meet Savi. They find out she was also on Flight 828, and it's her research that is treating Cal, which shocks them. In the meantime, Michaela runs into her best friend, Lord, when she goes to work. She does not talk to her and is told by her department that she will have to take a psych evaluation before she can return to work. The scene cuts to Ben, who hears the same tune from the morning as he passes a signal. He follows the tune and finds himself with Rad, a street singer and another passenger from Flight 828. Rad's son, Adio, was 13 years old when Rad boarded the plane and left his son with his neighbor. Adio is in jail for stealing from his job at the jewelry store, and Rad is unable to meet him. Ben uses his connections in the police department to help Rad meet Adio, and Adio insists he did not steal anything. Michaela visits Ben's house, where he tells her to keep the voices a secret from Grace too, as he does not want Grace to think of him as a different Ben than who he was 5 years ago. In the morning, Michaela overhears Grace as she talks to her boyfriend, and she asks Grace to tell Ben as soon as possible. Michaela then investigates the Adio case and finds that all the evidence says Adio is guilty. He used a false ID and there was no forced entry. Rad again talks to his son, but Adio is adamant that it was not him. He uses the fake ID to get better jobs, but he insists he would not steal from a job he worked so hard to get. At night, Grace buys Cal new toys as his previous ones were donated. However, he misses his limited edition Legos and rock collection. To his delight, Olive had kept all his belongings in a storage unit without telling Grace. Ben and Olive go to the storage unit, where Ben discovers that Grace has a boyfriend, and the storage unit belongs to the boyfriend. Olive hugs her dad and apologizes to him. All of a sudden, Ben hears the ringtone again, but this time it is not in his head, but real life. He follows it to a storage unit where he finds the jewelry store owner's son. He finds out the tune is the jewelry store owner's son's ringtone, and he was the one who stole from the store. Ben has the guy arrested, and Adio is freed, much to Rad's pleasure. Meanwhile, Michaela reunites with Lord after going through her Facebook page and finding several messages from Lord to Michaela over the years. Ben also talks to Grace about her affair and tells her he does not blame her, and Grace is grateful for Ben being so understanding.